Ontario Centres of Excellence, and I'd like to welcome you all to the Procurement Marketplace. OCE invests in collaboration that moves ideas to market, and what's critical is that these innovations find customers and that the customers know how to find these solutions. One of the largest customers is government, and the Ontario government alone spends billions of dollars each year, about 90% of which is spent on goods and services here in Ontario, from vendors in Ontario, and about 90% again of those Ontario vendors are SMEs. We're joined today by over 20 procurement representatives from all levels of government and from numerous ministries, including natural resources, transportation, health, community and social services, and correctional services and community safety. They can be found throughout the area around this theater. Their tables have tent cards, and I encourage the companies that are here to go over and sit down and meet with these representatives and speak with them. They're interested in knowing the products and services that you have, and you, of course, can ask them more about the procurement process and about how to do business with government. Our first presentation is an excellent example of procurement in practice, and I think also, in fact, a very innovative procurement process with the province working with many Ontario SMEs through its Green Focus on Innovation and Technology program, or Greenfit. And I'd like to welcome David Ogilvie. He's the Senior Policy Advisor of Technology Programs with the Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation. And he's going to present this project and then address your questions afterwards. David? Thanks, David.
Thanks very much, Peter. So I'm Dave Ogilvie from the Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation. Very happy to be here, not just because I get out of the office for a few hours, but I get to talk about a program that's near and dear to my heart, Green Focus on Innovation and Technology. What's really cool about the little talk today is that I'm actually going to be able to tell you guys some examples and some tangible things that you can see that we're doing with the program as it's matured over the last 2 years. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the application decision process that we use for Greenfit, but also I'll give you some examples at the end of some of the projects that we're doing. First thing to mention is that Greenfit is a program that's jointly run by the Ministry of Economic Development and our partners at the Ministry of Government Services. I'll talk more about how our two roles kind of split Greenfit up and the delegation of authority between the two ministries, but is it a jointly run program between the two ministries, which is kind of interesting. So what I want to cover in the next 20 to 30 minutes, and this is a lot of stuff, so I apologize if I go through it very quickly, but hopefully we'll have some time at the end for questions, and I'll also be hanging out at the procurement area if you do have any other questions. So in the next 20 to 30 minutes, what I want to cover is why Greenfit was introduced, what it's all about, how does the program operate, what kinds of projects are eligible, how does the application to decision process work? And it is quite unique, quite different from a regular procurement program. What's the status of Greenfit as we speak? And are there any results or expected outcomes with these projects? So if I haven't answered those 5 questions by the end of this, please raise a hand or come and see me. Thanks. All right. So just very quickly, the Greenfit strategy is a little bit larger than just the MEDI piece. We don't deal with commercialization, pre-commercialization and commercialization. We have a lot of programs that support that. The Innovation Demonstration Fund, all the great stuff that the Ontario Centres of Excellence do. All of that pre-commercialization, business support, mentoring program stuff is way before Greenfit. What we're concerned about is early adoption, first buyer opportunities, what we call new opportunities. And that's specifically what I'm going to be talking to you about today. That's the piece that my ministry operates. The second thing that we're trying to do is kind of modify the traditional approach to procurement. And what we're trying to do through the Ministry of Government Services is change that culture of procurement inside government and try to add more greening inside regular procurement. That's more of an inside initiative, but that's also part of Greenfit. And of course, with all of these projects, what we're trying to do is communicate and showcase results. And I'm going to speak a lot about value and changing the concept of value from traditional value for money into other values that have more to do with clean technologies. And so communication and showcasing success stories is a huge part of that for any aspect that we're talking about to do with Greenfit. So just to step back for a quick minute, I think I missed a slide here. All right, so Greenfit. To answer the question about why we introduced Greenfit, I'm going to tell you something you already know, and that's the fact that clean technology solutions face challenges with early sales and market adoption. You all know that. So Greenfit was introduced to allow the Government of Ontario to become an adopter of new technologies as they're coming onto the market. Oftentimes, the technologies are unproven or they're seen that way anyways. And so what we're intending to do with Greenfit is to purchase and validate those new green products, provide the companies with direct support for those solutions, and provide the companies, most importantly, with the credibility they need to kind of drive the market adoption of the technologies. The other really cool thing about Greenfit, and then this is going back to the whole value idea, is that Greenfit also helps to measure and validate the unique attributes of clean technology solutions. So getting away from the whole concept of value for money, which is still obviously very important to us as a government, but also to try to gather value for notable environmental, economic, and social impacts of the technologies. So in terms of the Greenfit operations, as I described earlier, my ministry mainly handles the new opportunity streams. And for those particular opportunities, we have two different types of application processes available. And what I'll say overall about these two processes is that they're quite unlike a traditional procurement process. Doesn't use a traditional procurement template or process. We employ processes that are closely related to our research development funding programs with an expert review process, and it's quite different from a regular procurement. So for the new demonstration projects, we have two processes that are available. The first is known as an open expression of interest. This allows any company with an eligible solution or pilot project concept to submit that idea to our ministry, and we take a look at it and assess it. It's basically open to any eligible company or technology solution. It's ongoing, it's generic, and it's available now. The second option is known as a targeted process. This process allows companies to submit responses to a specific ministry solicitation. So this is a very internally generated process. A ministry basically comes to us and says we're interested in a specific solution, and we go out to the vendor community and try to find that solution for them. Eligibility is really key. Obviously, what we're looking for are products that we as a government can use or our agencies can use. So products, not necessarily products that contribute to another product. But the general eligibility for the open expression of interest is that the project has to be implemented, tested, and performance validated within 2 years from the date of purchase approval. So again, that speaks to the fact that we're looking for innovative technologies that are either they've been on the market for a few years and don't have a lot of uptake, or they're just rolling out to the market. The solution also can't have been commercially available for more than 5 years. So we're not looking for those technologies that are out there in the marketplace and do have some adoption. Those companies generally don't need our help. Also, obviously, the solution can't have a history of use, can't be in use by the OPS. And the solution has to demonstrate clear, quantifiable environmental and economic benefits. So, in terms of green, I'm not going to walk you through the actual application process. What I want to focus on is our decision process and let you know how decisions are made and the way that we've kind of constructed the program. And what I'm going to walk you through here is called the Greenfit Decision Continuum. And Greenfit itself, the application process, as I explained, is called an expression of interest, and that's where we start, at the far left. As we move along the decision continuum, you see that we're gathering more information, we're validating the technology, and the ultimate value of any of these technologies doesn't come at the pilot project stage. It comes when we've proven the technology out, validated it, and we're making those decisions about wide-scale adoption and rollout. And also to the marketplace that's looking in on us, seeing which products we've tested out and validated. So the expression of interest is a high-level document. We basically gather information about the technology at a high level. We get an understanding of the technology. We get impacts regarding the environmental impacts, the economic impacts. Those are range estimates at this point, but that document allows us internally to go and find a ministry host for the technology and allow us to define a business case around that specific technology. So you can see as we go along the continuum, we're gathering more information, we're refining our information, and we're validating those technologies. Obviously, there's going to be a pilot project, a funding and approval that has to happen. The pilot project itself has to be performance validated and measured by the given host ministry. At the end of that, there's an evaluation on all the technologies. And then we're looking for OPS rollout investment decisions and showcasing opportunities. And ultimately, we're looking for market adoption. So those are really ancillary rollout decisions that don't necessarily reside with us, but it's key to the program. So you can see as we go along, we're gathering and we're refining, and the scope and precision and validity of all the supporting information and data that we're gathering in these technologies is growing. Decisions along each step of the continuum should be made in a way that basically recognizes both the environmental and economic value of a specific technology. So again, trying to get away from just purely value for money. And again, just to emphasize that ultimate value to all of us is realized not necessarily in the pilot project stage, but when the pilot projects are delivered in a wide-scale format for their environmental and economic impacts. And again, this decision continuum is fairly generic in nature. This is refined depending on the technology, and if we do a targeted process, it might be condensed, but it gives you an idea of the stages that are involved and the ultimate goal to get these technologies adopted by the marketplace. So I'm a cyclist, and so this is me last year in Nova Scotia, and I think cycling is a great metaphor for a lot of things in life, but it's a great metaphor for Greenfit in general. There's a lot of moving parts to this. When you're going down a mountain at 70 kilometers an hour, you have to make sure your bike's going to stop. There's a lot going on to do with the physical fitness of the athlete as well as the bike. Same thing's true of Greenfit. The ministries have a lot of stuff they need to validate. They need to understand the technologies precisely before decisions are made for wide-scale adoption. So I think it's a good metaphor for how we're setting principles in motion. And what I thought I'd do is walk you through one of some of the key decisions that were made through a process we did with the Ministry of Transportation last year. We ran a pilot project for them, an application process for anti-idling technology, and I'll speak more about that a little bit later. But I'm just going to walk you through some of the key decision points along the way. So in other words, taking that decision continuum and making it a bit more real with some specific examples. So again, as we move from left to right, what we're trying to do is make a series of decisions that will ultimately end up in wide-scale market adoption. The first decision that is made by the Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation. That's the pilot project proposal itself. We see that with our expert reviewers, and the question we're trying to answer is basically which proposals best meet MTO and Greenfit criteria. Just to give you an idea of timing and how we can do these things in an expedited fashion, that was done in February and March 2011. The next decision on pilot project funding is obviously made by the host ministry, who's putting up the funds to do the pilot project. And obviously they're answering the question, which projects are we interested in piloting or funding? That decision was made in April 2011. The pilot project itself is still going on, and I'll give you some stats on how things are going, but it should be complete fairly soon, and the technology technically should be validated relatively soon. And the main decision point, obviously, at that point is which technology should be showcased for rollout and on what scale. That hopefully will be happening sometime in 2011 or 2012. But it gives you an idea how these key decisions as we move along are escalated, and the decisions are not just made by one ministry, but eventually they're made by a series of ministries in government, and ancillary decisions are made by individuals looking in on the pilot project itself. Value to all of us can be found with environmental, economic, specific value that's created with the pilot projects, and I'll show you specifically what I'm talking about in a few minutes. And I think the other unique attribute about Greenfit is that we're creating value not just for the Ontario government and the products that we're servicing and using, but we're seeing value to OPS fleets, external fleets in this case, municipalities, suppliers, auto and parts manufacturers, and the companies themselves who actually get an opportunity to implement a technology in a real world situation and understand the ins and outs of how that goes and possibly even course correct along the way. So there's value that's being created for all of the different players in this specific thing, and I think that's an excellent lesson to take away from it. Now, just kind of getting back to how we actually make some of the decisions, because what we're talking about here are making decisions for things that we classify as intangible things. You're talking about environmental value, economic value, and those things are fairly subjective and they're hard to rate. What we use, the methodology we use, is provided through something called ProGrid. You might be familiar with this kind of methodology. Future Innovate Network is one of our providers for Greenfit, and they were also a provider for the engine idle management pilot project that we did with MTO. And what we use to define some of those intangible things to try to get a real value and a rated value on those are called language ladders. And language ladders basically provide a series of succinct statements with the lowest or least desirable at position A and the most desirable at position D. And I'll walk you through what one of those looks like. So we can have language ladders for all kinds of intangible things depending on the project. For this particular solution, we had a series of about 17 different rated criteria. This is an example of one of them that has to do with solution readiness. So you can see from the list below, please select which of the statements best describes the readiness of the solution for pilot project development. And then the applicant has to justify their selection. Solution has not yet reached full commercial status, obviously, as an A selection, and that's not necessarily what we're looking for. Right up to the solution proposed for the project is commercially available and can be easily adapted to the application. So it gives you kind of an idea of how that's done. What we can do once we have answers from the applicant company is we can do specific reports to identify and analyze particular areas of strength or weakness. And you can kind of see in the upper right, I've represented the 17 different categories, and it's quite easy to pinpoint for this particular applicant where the issues are and hone in on what needs attention or where there's a specific gap that we just won't be able to overcome in the pilot project. And we can do all kinds of analysis and reports to understand which pilot projects kind of land at the top and which are in the middle and which we really can't pursue because there's just too much risk involved. At this stage, again, what we're talking about is all coming from the company. This information hasn't been validated, so I think the key thing to remember is that the validation occurs in the pilot project itself, but this helps us to understand and pinpoint which pilot projects we want to pursue. Very quickly on the status of Greenfit. As of March 2012, we've seen over 200 self-assessments. And one of the other interesting things we've done is we've introduced a tool that allows companies to go in and kind of self-assess whether they are in fact eligible for the initiative and whether they want to take the time to actually make a full-blown expression of interest to us, which takes a bit of time. So we've had 200 of these self-assessments done by companies in the last 2 years, and we've received 23 actual applications to Greenfit. Out of those, a waste management pilot project has been recommended to the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines. That's operational as of November last year, and I'll give you a bit of an update on that project. 2 other pilot projects are under consideration right now by potential ministries or host agencies for 2012. We've done 2 processes through the targeted stream. We've done a project with the Ministry of Education called the Green Schools Pilot Initiative. They provided $20 million in funding for that particular program, and they've implemented technologies in over 150 different schools across Ontario with 23 different companies, so that's excellent. We've also, as I mentioned before, conducted a ministry-specific process for the Ministry of Transportation, and that project's called the Engine Idle Management Pilot Project, and that began last year, and I'll give you a bit of an update on that project as well. Now to kind of get to some of the interesting stuff. What we want to ultimately do with these pilot projects, as I mentioned before, is to validate and create some understanding of the value in terms of their environmental value or the specific economic value. So what we're trying to do is some modeling to support investment decisions. All of the pilot projects require comprehensive performance tracking and final reports to ensure that the products are validated. And we found a few years ago that some ministries are really, really refined in this. They have a good understanding of performance gathering and validation. Other ministries, not so much. So what we've done at our ministry is we've tried to create a system where ministries that are interested, they can use that system to help track and validate the performance of their technologies that are coming through Greenfit. If they're using the system that we're developing now, the intent is that they'll have the ability to generate automated analysis and reports on both an interim basis and as a final report. And that modeling can help inform investment. Before I go into a few of the examples, I just want to put a few caveats on these things. The first one is that I'm only going to represent 4 examples. There are a lot more that we've seen through the project, but I'm going to represent 4 for you. The other thing to note is that these technologies are still being validated. So the value factors that I'm going to represent, that might change as the technologies are validated and we understand a bit more about them. And the other thing is that I'm not going to be representing all of the value factors that we're collecting on these technologies. And I'll give you a specific example. In some of the technologies that the Ministry of Education has funded, there are some interesting kind of ancillary benefits. There's a few different technologies that are web-based, which allows students to go in and have a good understanding of GHG reductions, energy generation, and those can be used for education and curriculum development, which was an excellent additional kind of value that's being created with these pilot projects. I'm not going to represent those kind of things. I'm going to speak to them at a fairly high level. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I wanted to give credit and thanks to all the host ministries. My ministry basically looks at the technologies as they come through the doors. We make the recommendations, we fund and operate that process, but it's really the ministries that are on the ground making these pilot projects happen, giving up the funds to make them happen. So I have to give credit and thanks to all the host ministries, the Ministry of Transportation for the Idle Management Project, the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines for the Waste Management Project, and the Ministry of Education for the Green Schools Pilot Initiative, whereby they have a whole slew of different technologies that they're testing. And the Ministry of Education was actually the first out of the gate that actually did the pilot run for Greenfit in general. So thanks to the support of those ministries as well. So to get into some specific examples, this is the Engine Idle Management Pilot Project. And if you're interested in this, they're actually here today. Mike Cole is here with his crew in the government area if you wanted to know a little bit more about this pilot project. But this is basically an idle reduction project. And the technology that we're talking about offers a significant opportunity not only to reduce our fuel consumption, but to realize all those ancillary environmental and economic benefits. And I'll kind of walk you through how some of that looks. The objective of the pilot project was to evaluate the capabilities of this type of technology, establish and estimate the potential savings, and determine the optimal vehicles that this should be used in. So it's currently being tested in about 34 different vehicles. It's scheduled for testing in 34 more. And this is a range of different vehicles from the Ontario Provincial Police, the MTO, Niagara Parks Police, MOE, and the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office. So there are a range of different ministries, a range of different vehicles. These are all high-use, high-polluting, high-idle vehicles. So it was a good target population. And these are some of the environmental benefits. And again, I'll remind you that these are basically based on the data that we have now. It's changing all the time. And until the project wraps up, it might change further. So far, we've seen engine idling reduced by over 35% under normal usage. So not only is that creating fuel savings, but the equivalent in reductions of GHGs. One of the really cool things about this, and something that we don't often talk about, is that the life of the vehicles is also extended. So I was astounded to learn how quickly we replace our police vehicles, but it's unbelievable. If you can extend the life of those vehicles by even 6 months, it has enormous ramifications, and I'll kind of show you how that looks. So to date, the pilot project has saved almost 11,000 liters of fuel, and that equates to 23 metric tons of GHG emissions. Now, that's only for the pilot project. So if you extrapolate that for not our whole fleet, not all of Ontario, if you extrapolate that for, say, 3,000 vehicles, that's going to produce a potential total savings of $73 million on a $4.5 million investment. That's pretty huge. And that's the kind of value proposition that we want to get to, and the kind of modeling we want to get to understand which of these projects really gives us not only value for money, but excellent returns on both our money and the environment. Now, those potential savings include approximately $28 million in fuel savings, $19 million in maintenance, and $26 million in capital savings. So the capital savings are almost equivalent to the fuel savings, and that's, again, speaking to the life extension of the vehicles themselves. So that's huge. The second project I want to talk about, and this one to me is a great one. I love water technologies, and this is one that was done through the Green Schools Pilot Initiative, Waterloo Biofilter Systems Incorporated. And they're basically providing advanced wastewater treatment to 3 of our schools, 2 different boards. And this effluent that's coming out is incredibly clean. It's almost swimming water quality. So although they're not using it for toilet flushing and that kind of thing, there is that potential, and they've validated that through the pilot project. Just very quickly on the environmental benefits. So we're seeing not only the wastewater contaminants being taken out and the baselines. I won't go into details on them, but the change in terms of the effluent coming out of these schools is enormous. And in addition to the water contaminants being removed, we're seeing energy savings on the range of 65 to 84% compared to existing technologies, which is massive. And that, for a large school, equates to about $3,000 savings per month, which is outstanding. The third example I want to give you is food cycle science. And this is a project that the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines is pursuing. It's in place now. And they basically had an issue with one of their facilities in Sudbury. They were generating about 100 pounds of organic waste daily. And they wanted to understand how they could get rid of this waste, turn something that is essentially a cost for them into a benefit. So the food cycle science solution is basically a dehydration process. It's kind of like a super composter that processes organic and food waste within a few hours rather than a few weeks or months. And what we're finding, we've done about 35 cycles with this technology since just this past January. And that particular facility has taken 1,500 kilograms of organic waste and turned it into 265 kilograms of organic fertilizer. And we've had the fertilizer tested, and it's extremely good stuff. There's a lot of value there. So again, you're turning something that is a cost for either the company or the particular ministry into a potential revenue-generating item. Further reductions in methane gas, wastewater produced by rotting food waste, and again, the energy savings from fewer waste pickups. We're still figuring out the economic benefits, But right now, we actually are looking on a net benefit on the economic side. We're seeing that it does have a return on investment because the life cycle of the technology is so long. So that is excellent. Not only are you getting incredible environmental savings, but you ultimately will see a return on your investment. And the chart at the bottom just shows their for each of the cycles, their reduction in organic waste and the production of their fertilizer, which they're using on their gardens. And in some instances, obviously, you can sell that back to the community. Third example I want to give you is Fifth Light Technology, and this is another Green Schools Pilot Initiative project. And again, this is advanced lighting control. It's web-based, and there's that curriculum element that can be built into this. This technology has been installed in over 6,000 different control points across 8 schools, 5 different boards. We're seeing a combined overall energy savings across the spectrum of 8 schools of 59%. And we're seeing individual school energy savings between 50 and 75%. Incredible. And there's potential for additional savings once the company is able to go in and optimize the efficiencies on these things. So that's showing a payback of somewhere between 3 to 5 years, which is incredible. So very quickly, if we kind of look at some modeling on this thing, if we're talking about GHG reductions, we're showing potential yearly savings of over 65 metric tons per average school. Again, this is pushing it out over 20 years, but that's pretty incredible. That equates, if we were to do it for 1,000 schools, that's 1.3 million metric tons of CO2 over that 20-year period, which is incredible. If we take it one step further and look at the fact that lighting makes up 30% of the overall power consumption of a school, the savings are huge. 380,000 per school. If we look at 1,000 typical schools, we're looking at savings of 47.5 million yearly and over 950 million over 20 years with a capital investment of 200 million. So again, just incredible numbers. So one of the things, and I'll wrap up because I think I'm just about out of time, we're just in the process of doing some of the final analysis on the Green Schools Pilot Initiative projects, and we did a survey a short time ago to find out what the companies thought of all this. And what we're seeing is that 85% of the companies indicated that this particular project would have a significant influence on the awareness of their solution. And over 90% of the companies indicated positive returns on investment for their Green Schools Pilot Initiative participation. So again, we're seeing a lot of value being created by this. And I'm really excited about the project. It's starting to gain a bit of momentum, so I'd love to see more of these things come through the door. So if you yourself have an innovative technology that you'd like to see adopted by the government, or you know of someone, come and see me. And I'll leave that. I think I've got maybe 5 minutes for questions. Yes, Peter. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
What are some of the lessons learned by government through this process? And then from those lessons learned, what sort of advice would you give to companies like Fifth Light, the ones you referred to at the end, that would like to be approaching you and doing business with government?
Great question. I think the key issue, and I think there's another program, a federal program that's similar to Greenfit that's going to be speaking in the early afternoon. And one of the things that we've found is that there's some cultural issues with procurement, and those exist for a reason. I mean, we're very careful of the public purse. It's in the public eye, but what it's created is an environment that ministries are actually really afraid to go out. And this program is quite different from regular procurement. So there's quite a bit of apprehension for ministries to actually go after some of these technologies. They're worried about how it looks and how this particular project will be met by the public and by competitors. So what we found is that it's more of an internal education that has to happen. And one of the things that we've done to try to correct that is we've brought in host ministries much earlier in the process. So when we get a technology that comes through the door, one of the first things that I do is I try to find a potential host ministry almost straight out and get them involved in the review process so that they have an understanding of the process and the technology right from the start. The sales on the technology, once we make a recommendation and don't have a ministry involved, are much more difficult. And again, it speaks to that cultural mindset of ministries that are kind of set up to do traditional procurement, RFPs, and things in that sense. So it's a bit of an internal battle, but we're getting there, and it's taken a few years, and momentum is starting to pick up on that. So that's great. Yes. Sure. Yeah, I can clarify that. So the question was, can we just clarify the open expression of interest versus a targeted expression of interest? And the open expression of interest, as you've seen, is quite different from an RFP process. It basically allows for unsolicited proposals at any time. The targeted process, I wouldn't say it's similar to an RFP. It's set up in the same way that we do the open expression of interest, except what we do is we modify the application templates to fit the needs of the specific ministry. For example, for the Ministry of Transportation, we modified all the environmental requirements based on the technology that they were looking for. So it's a much more refined, specific type of application, but it's in the vein of what you saw for the open expression of interest, not a traditional RFP, no. Yeah, that's a good question too. Those are posted on, we do them publicly, so it's done like an RFP, but it's a different application. So we post those on Merck's. For the MTO one, they posted the advertisement, we posted the advertisement, and the Ministry of Government Services posted the advertisement. And we also targeted those to specific companies that we know have that technology. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So, sorry, say that again? Okay. Yes, that's the idea with the pilot projects, is that for once the pilot project is implemented, well, basically we set all that up beforehand. So the pilot project, basically we base our approval on the outcome of the pilot project. We often say what we do is we start from the end goal and we work our way back to the beginning. So for whatever technology we're talking about, the expression of interest, the first document that we see is kind of a generic, kind of a template that the company fills in. It's like it has applications across the spectrum, so anything from water technology to CO2 sequestering technology, but it's general. When we go into the business case, that's when you're married up with a specific ministry, and that's when we get into the details of how is this going to look, how are we actually going to validate the technology. And we have consultants that we've brought in to help us refine that process and create a performance plan around that. And then the pilot project itself obviously goes through and validates what we've created for the company. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So that proves that procurement is active, it does work, and it can be your company, it can be your product, it can be your service. I know the Fifth Light people very well, so it's real. We want to also now talk about the procurement process in general. How do you do business with government? What do you need to know? What are the details? How do you step through the process? And to do that, we have representatives from the Ontario, from the federal, and the municipal governments here to speak. And I'm going to ask Kevin Fox, there he is, from the province, to come up first and speak about Ontario procurement process. Kevin is the Senior Procurement Consultant in the Stakeholder Outreach Unit of the Ministry of Government Services, Supply Chain Management Division. And we'll just get you mic'd up, I think, Kevin. You're all set to go? Okay. And I'll hold on to this for Q&A.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much. Can you hear me all right? Whoops. Thank you. Okay, that's good. Perfect. Again, my name is Kevin Fox. I'm with the Ministry of Government Services, Supply Chain Management, with Stakeholder Outreach. And what we do is we go around the province teaching vendors how to do business with the Ontario government. So today you're going to see a mini overview of our presentation. We have the federal government is here, of course, the province and the City of Toronto. And we do these events around the province with the local municipalities, teaching the vendor community how to do business with the different levels of government. My background is about 18 years of selling to the federal governments, the provincial governments, and the municipalities across Canada. So I'm here to be able to give you a little bit of tips on how to go about doing business with them. It's a great opportunity for us to be able to share some information and let you know about what the Ontario government buys. We buy all kinds of goods and services. Basically, the Ontario government spent in 2011 $6.38 billion, and we had contracts of over 61,200 contracts out on an annual basis. And we'll buy everything from a few $100s all the way up to several $1 million. And we're buying everything from road construction to bridge work to vehicles to fruit, vegetables, uniforms, hardware, software, consulting services, etc. And the main thing I wanted to talk to you about is that 95% of those contracts we have in place are with vendors from Ontario, and 96% are with small and medium enterprise. So that's companies that are under 500 employees. So what I thought we'd do first is just kind of touch base again on the procurement landscape. And this is, if you were to ask how to do business with the Ontario government, and you wanted to differentiate between the Ontario public sector and the broader public sector, this slide kind of tells you how that's set up. So Ministry of Government Services, who I'm with, we are the policy holder for the Ontario government. So we have what we call a Procurement Directive, and I'll touch base on that in a few seconds. And so what we do is we write the policy for goods, services, IT, construction, how to run our procurements. We also assist the ministries and the agencies on their procurement of goods and services as well. So we have templates that we do provide to them, etc. And we also have what we call an enterprise vendor of record program. We have 67 different vendors. It's an enterprise vendor of record. These are commonly good procured services, such as everything from courier services to office products to vehicles, to different types of computers, consulting services, etc. Commonly purchased goods and services. Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporation, they're the policy owner for accommodation and real estate procurements. And they'll look after and coordinate all the accommodation and leasehold improvements for both the Ontario public sector as well as the broader public sector. And they'll also attract major investment for major capital infrastructure projects throughout Ontario. One of them is Toronto 2015, and Toronto 2015 is the Pan-Parapan Games that are coming up, and it's going to be worth over $1.1 billion. So it's a great opportunity for you to get your foot in the door and touch base on the opportunities there. Other government agencies, such as Hydro One, Ontario Power Agency, Ontario Ontario Gaming and Lottery Corporation, and LCBO. So they do their own procurement. They are the policy holders as well, and they'll operate as independent entities. The broader public sector is the MASH sector, and the MASH sector is basically made up of municipalities, academic institutions, your universities and colleges, school boards, and hospital buying groups. And so they'll procure, again, their own services. Sometimes they'll use bid and go, sometimes they'll also use MERCs for any goods and services that are over the $25,000 for goods, over 100,000 for services. And last is Ministry of Finance. The Ministry of Finance, they're the policy holder for the broader public sector from the Procurement Directive perspective. So that's a quick overview of procurement within the Ontario public sector and the broader public sector. I'll take your questions afterwards if I can. So what we do within the Ontario public sector, we have a Procurement Directive. And the Procurement Directive basically looks after all the rules and regulations of how we run our procurements for information technologies, goods and services, and construction. And the directive is based upon making sure that we uphold four main principles. And those four main principles, of course, are vendor access, transparency, and fairness. We want to make sure that our procurements are open to all vendors and are all qualified vendors, and they're treated equally fairly on all the procurements that we do run. Geographic neutrality and reciprocal non-discrimination. Basically, we're opening them up to organizations that do share reciprocal procurements, such as across the provinces, across our borders, etc. Value for money, we're always looking for the best value that we can in our procurements. Not necessarily the lowest price, but best value. And best value means that we're going through the process, the procedures, we're looking at ethical decisions on all the decision makings and when we're doing our awards, etc. Thank you. So we want to make sure, that's one thing, thank you for turning off your cell phones. I apologize for that. Value for money, we're always making sure that our decisions are based on the best value for the Ontario taxpayer. And responsible management. We go through process and procedures on all the procurements that we do have. Again, making sure that we're following the rules and regulations that are set forth in the Procurement Directive, and that our decisions are made in a fair, equitable manner. We also adhere to trade agreements, and the Ontario government has signed two trade agreements, the Ontario-Quebec Trade Agreement, which was signed in July 2009, as well as the Agreement on Internal Trade. We are also part of the Canada-United States Procurement Agreement, which was just recently signed, and as we go on and we're doing foreign trade missions, there's a lot of different trade agreements that are taking place, both in Europe, China, Far East, etc. So Canada is certainly expanding its procurement area of doing business with the world providers. But the trade agreement for the Agreement on Internal Trade basically states that any good over $25,000, any service or construction over $100,000, we must advertise via electronic means. That is currently, our provider is currently Merck's, as well as we have the opportunity to be able to utilize a national newspaper such as the Globe and Mail. And for construction, we utilize Daily Commercial News, and Ministry of Transportation will use what we call RACS, and that's Registry Appraisal and Qualification System. Now, one thing I also wanted to point out is that consulting services, there must be a competitive process that will take place for all procurement contracts, regardless of that value. And a lot of the procurement that we do, we also fall underneath that $25,000 for goods and $100,000 for services. And that's where you want to contact the representatives within the various ministries and agencies and let them know about the goods and services that you have available and the value that you can bring to the Ontario government. We also wanted to touch base on how to write an effective proposal. And again, when you're looking at doing a response to one of our procurement documents, you should ask yourselves these following questions. And first of all is my company capable of providing the goods and services that are being requested? Is it a good fit? Do I have the capability of being able to answer this tender and have a reasonable opportunity to win that bid? Does my company meet the evaluation criteria? Can I answer yes to all the mandatories and all the desirables that are there? Do I have the ability to score well within all of those desirables? Does my company also accept the terms and conditions that are included within that procurement document? And in the area of I&IT, we have standardized our terms and conditions to make it easier for the vendor. And is my company capable of winning the contract against competition? You should always know who your competition is, not only for when you're submitting your response, But secondly, because you may have an opportunity of being able to supply some of those goods and services, maybe you can't supply them all, so you might want to go into a partnership. You may want to partner with another vendor, or you may want to be a subcontractor to that opportunity. And does my company, again, accept the basis of payment and pricing methods? So you should go into those types of questions and answers before you go in and decide whether or not to submit your response. Secondly, how do you prepare your proposal? So we lay out our proposals quite, most of them are all in the same manner, where we'll have an overview, exactly what we're looking for from the vendor community. We'll also say these are the mandatories, these are the desirables, this is the pricing structure. And within that area, from the mandatory perspective, you will be asked to be able to say true or false, yes or no, that you can answer the mandatories that we're asking for. One of the things that a lot of vendors forget to do is they forget to have an authorized signature sign the form when they're providing the response. Make sure that you provide all the responses on all the evaluated requirements. They're going to be scored accordingly, so provide sufficient information within those areas as well. If you have been a vendor in the past, then what you want to do is not go on past laurels. You want to be able to answer the tender in its entirety, because that's how you're going to be judged. Not on past performance, but how you have answered that actual procurement document. Everything will be rated, of course, when we do our due diligence. And there will be a pricing bid form within that proposal. So we ask that you complete that so that we can do an apples for apples comparison with all the respondents who have answered that particular procurement document. And then any other requested documents that are in there, such as your tax declaration, such as your non-conflict of interest, those are the other additional forms that we do include within our request for proposal. So marketing to the Ontario government. And again, this is a very high-level, abbreviated presentation. We do seminars quite often, both at Queen's Park. We'll do partnered seminars, again, with the various levels of government. And we have something what we call Supply Ontario, which I'll touch base in a few moments. But what you should do as an organization is be familiar with what the government is looking for. The government puts out a number of different information criteria to you. They'll have the throne speech. They'll have the budget. Do you ever hear about the government being in the internet or in the newspaper? We're there all the time. Learn as much information as you can about that government organization before you approach them. Have your pitch available, your elevator speech. You have sometimes got a very limited time to be able to have access to individuals, so make sure that you prepare a statement that this is why the Ontario government should consider doing business with you, whether it's for a good or for a service. Use what we call InfoGo. InfoGo is the Ontario government telephone directory. You can Google InfoGo, you can go onto our supply chain management website. It will provide to you contact information by either individuals that work for the Ontario government or by organizations. So you can find, if you know the name of the individual, you can get their phone number, you can get their email address. If you know the organization or the ministry or agency that you want to do business with, you can scroll down, find that ministry, find out what their main contribution is for the Ontario taxpayer, what their mandates are, and then you can go in by each division within that ministry, by each branch, all the way down to each business unit. And within each one of those levels, you can get contact information as to who that individual is that you want to speak to. So reach out to them, find out about when they're going to be going to procurement, what they're looking for from a value provider, from a vendor, and so that you can have that opportunity to be able to do business with them. This is our website. Our website has just recently changed. It is a Supply Chain Management's website, part of Ministry of Government Services. There's information for vendors, there's information for buyers. If you're a vendor, the area, of course, that you want to go to is the information for vendors. We'll talk to you about upcoming events and seminars. We'll talk to you about supply chain management's division. There's forms, there's our laws, there's the publications, there's different presentations, but there's lots of information here about how to become a vendor. We also have the Vendor of Record program, which I mentioned to you earlier, which is the 67 enterprise-wide vendor of record programs that we do have for commonly procured goods and services. It lists all of those vendor of record programs. You can find out about a 3-year vendor of record profile as to when we're going to be publishing through MERCS, advertising future procurement opportunities for different vendor of record arrangements that we're trying to put together. Also, we'll tell you about major announcements that we have coming up. Supply Ontario is a reverse trade show. It happens once or twice a year, hosted by Ministry of Government Services, Supply Chain Management. It's a reverse trade show where we have the procurement individuals from the Ontario public sector and the broader public sector manning the booths, and we invite the local vendor community to come out to meet the vendors, to find out what types of goods and services they have, also to find out about the types of procurements. The vendors can find out about the types of procurements that those ministries and agencies are going to be doing in the future. It's a great 3 hours of invested time for you to find out procurement opportunities that are going to come forward in the near future. There's going to be one taking place next week. It's in Sudbury at Laurentian University. And there's going to be a second one that's going to take place in the fall, November timeframe. We're just finalizing the actual arrangements and site location, but it'll be in Mississauga. And so again, it's an excellent time for you to be able to come in, meet the procurement people from the Ontario public sector and the broader public sector, for them to learn about the goods and services that you have available. So what we wanted to do today is just again, just touch base on a very high level presentation on process, procedures, how to write an effective proposal, and how to market. This is our contact information. Our contact information, our website is www.doingbusiness.mgs.gov.on.ca. Our email address, if you ever have a question on how to do business with us, you can submit an email to us at doingbusiness@ontario.ca. We'll be happy to research that information that you're looking for and respond accordingly. Our 1-800 or our 1-866 phone number is here too. You can send that in, you can call at any time, and they'll transfer that information to us. And Service Ontario is another excellent gateway for you to be able to obtain information, website information, how to register, how to license, different information to help the business community to do business both in Ontario as well as to be able to touch base with different internet websites that are situated with other government organizations. That is my very quick, high-level presentation today. I thank you for that. Based on time, how are we doing? We're doing well? So we can take a couple questions if you've got. Also, our booth is 204, 206, and we're going to be here at the Procurement Marketplace too. Both Barb Dodds from the Ministry of Government Services, Stakeholder Outreach, and myself will be here to answer any questions that you may have one-on-one. Yes?
Thank you very much. Okay, so let me just start. I think, Robin, I heard that.
What are the sorts?
Okay, so I can repeat your question.
Are the biggest challenge that you face?
The question was asked was about the vendor of record program. So there's 3 different types of vendor records with the Ontario government. There's enterprise-wide. There's 67 different enterprise-wide vendor record programs, and they're commonly procured goods and services that all of the ministries would be utilizing. There are multi-ministry vendor record arrangements, and that's where we have a couple of ministries, maybe 2 or 3 ministries that do procure commonly good services, so they've got together and they've got their multi-ministry vendor record program. And then there's individual vendor record programs that a ministry who buys a particular good or service that's only unique to them, they would have that to simplify and cut down that procurement process. So on our website, if you were to click on the vendor record program, you'll see these. You would enter in the goods and services that you've got within your keyword search, and then you would hit all, and we'll list all of the 67 different types of vendor record programs that we have. You can go on to those individual vendor records, find out what that program encompasses, and then you can find out who those vendors are. The federal government. Okay, so the federal government are going to talk next. They have a little bit of a different. Okay. Oh, no, we don't register. The Ontario government, you register for that. To become a vendor, to do business with the federal government, you register. With the Ontario government, what we do is the vendor of record, again, is only for those 67 commonly good procured
I
areas.
understand all of that.
Okay.
That's perfectly clear. What I don't understand is what are the requirements for the SME or the company that's supplying to the government to become a vendor of record?
Okay,
Are
so
there any
what we-
requirements?
What we do, we will utilize MERCs to advertise that vendor of record program, and you answer that request for proposal. Okay, then you're going to be rated, and if you qualify to become a vendor of record program within that particular good or service, then what happens, we'll go to the second stage process where we put out a request for services, and that request for services may be a request for tender or a request for proposal, and they are sent out to those people that have qualified for that vendor of record program. Okay, so I can kind of fill you out a little bit more. It's somewhat similar to their national standing offer programs. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. We'll go with the microphone so that.
Might be a little bit generic, and maybe I would table it for discussion with you separately. But in terms of product development and those that have products, but they're looking for needs assessment or feedback about actual usage and how it would apply to government agencies or the broader public sector, is there any restriction to feeding the development of a product in order to later procure that product? Because I've heard conflicting stories.
Okay, so you're looking for, you've got a new product design, new concept, that type of thing. But that's a great opportunity for you to meet with different government agencies, you know. But you want to be able to focus your attention on the ministries that can utilize your service. If it is something that is going to be, it's not commercially released, and it could qualify for the Greenfit program. David Ogilvy just did that presentation just earlier, and he's at the booth right next to us. Then that's how I would proceed. You can go onto our website under the Greenfit area. If it is going to reduce the carbon footprint, save water, reduce carbon, waste, anything along those lines. But if it's, these are the goods and services that I'm developing, and you want to get some feedback, that's where I would use the marketing approach, touch base with individuals that are within operations, within finance, within procurement, with the various ministries and agencies where you feel could utilize that goods and services to get their feedback before they go into that procurement stage. Okay? And we can talk a little bit more again on the one-on-one with that. Any other questions? If not, we'll have my colleague come up next, and Peter, you can do that introduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. And once again, I'm Nicholas Falcone, Coordinator for Corporate Purchasing Policy and Quality Assurance at the City of Toronto. I'm going to go through this PowerPoint presentation real quick. It's normally a 45 to 50-minute presentation, but I'm going to try to condense it into 20 minutes. What's that? We're in good time? All right. I want to leave a little bit of time for questions and that kind of stuff. I think it will be posted on the OCE website, so you can access it there and that kind of stuff, okay? So this morning I'm just going to talk a little bit about the City of Toronto's procurement activity, what our role is as our Purchasing Materials Management Division in the process. I'm going to talk about our online call document system. We are not on MERCs, we're not on Bid Navigator or any of those other sites. And important contacts, and then we're going to have some questions, okay? So as you're all well aware, City of Toronto is one of the largest purchasers of goods and services in the Canada, basically, okay? Different things we purchase, our goods and services unit, automobiles, any electrical supplies, hardware, anything that makes the city run, our operational supplies, okay? Construction services unit, anything to do with construction or construction-related procurement activities, they process through them, okay? Our professional services unit, any professional service-related purchase, okay? So consulting, engineering services, law enforcement, lawyers, that kind of thing, okay? So last year, just to give you a little bit of numbers, $1.1 billion in purchases were processed through our division at the City of Toronto. Okay, so we're a fairly big player, a lot of business opportunity there. Just a little bar graph since amalgamation to the mega city. Shows our purchasing power. Before I'm asked, I'll answer the question. There was some blips back in for the 2010, 29, 28. One was our major snow plowing and salting contracts that came into or came up for renewal. So there was a big RFQ on that. And then our famous federal government gave us some infrastructure funding spending. So they threw us a bunch of money, so we improved our roads and everything else. But on the average, we're about a $1 to $1.1 billion in annual purchases, okay? How our purchases are broken down, to give you an idea, depending on what business you're in, about 50% of it is construction related, road repairs, all the rest of that good stuff. And pretty equally split between goods and services and professional services at about 25% each there, okay? We always try to obtain highest quality goods or services, best possible price, of course, and meeting all the requirements, including delivery and everything else, which results, of course, in best value for the taxpayers of the city, okay? How do we procure at the City of Toronto? Similar to what Kevin mentioned earlier, all of our or vast majority of our purchases are competitively bid. We strive to achieve an open, transparent process for all our purchases, okay? All of our business opportunities valued over $50,000 are advertised on our own website, okay? www.toronto.ca, and doing business with the city, and I'll go through that at the end of the presentation, okay? We also advertise for any of the construction or construction-related projects in our daily commercial news, okay? We do have a materials management function. We have 17 warehouses throughout the city, responsible for the distribution of about $16 million annually in goods to city divisions, agencies, boards, and commissions. And at the end of the purchasing cycle, we sell or get rid of our surplus or obsolete goods through public auctions or sales. So we offer them back to the public, and we generate revenue back to the city that way, okay? We do standardize where required for like goods throughout city divisions and everything else, and combine commonly used items and to obtain better economies of scale, okay? Again, we're responsible for purchases for all city divisions, Toronto Police Service as requested. They do their own purchasing mainly. Okay, so if you're interested in doing business with the City Toronto Police Service, go to their website. They advertise their opportunities there, and we purchase for the exhibition place as well. Okay, our three main purchasing documents: request for quotes, request for proposals, and request for tenders. That's a quick little flow chart, if you will, on our purchasing process. Basically, a need is identified, budgets are approved, and approval is obtained, and then we conduct a competitive call process, and then we award to the successful bidder, and at the end of the life cycle, we dispose of the assets. Everyone's familiar with that. I'm not going to spend too much more time on that one. Okay, so we solicit our bids by telephone, email, or fax for anything valued under $50,000. Okay, anything over $50,000 goes through a formal competitive call process, as I mentioned. Request for tenders for construction projects, predominantly. Request for quotations, usually for goods, operational requirements, that kind of thing. And request for proposals for services. Okay, when we do sell specialty items, for example, we do issue request for offer to purchase. Okay, that way the difference there is we're selling surplus assets, that kind of thing, and we award to the highest bidder as opposed to the lowest bidders on the other ones. Okay, our public bid openings are conducted every day at noon at City Hall, 18th floor, West Tower. Okay, one tip I can give you guys, and please, if you're submitting a bid to the city, there's a closing date and time on all of our bids. Please get it in on time, okay? If we do timestamp everything, if you get it in past 12:01 p.m., we cannot consider your bid. No exceptions. All right. I can't tell you, if you want to have a good laugh, you can come to City Hall and sit there at 11:59 a.m. and sit in the lobby, and you'll see a bunch of vendors running by trying to get their bids in on time. Okay, we give plenty of time for that, as I'm sure the other government agencies do. Please get your bids in on time. One other thing, since I'm on that, please sign your bids. Okay, some people spend a lot of time, some vendors, on putting together a good proposal, a bid, or what have you, a response to one of our requests for quotations, and they forget to sign the cover sheet. It's not a valid bid. Please, please make sure your bid is duly signed. Okay, a couple little tips. Okay, basically what happens then is a joint review process once we receive the bids by the closing date and time by both the Purchasing Materials Management Division staff as well as our City Division staff, our stakeholders. Okay, requests for proposals and requests for tenders are awarded on the lowest bidder meeting specifications. Okay, it's very important. Lowest bidder meeting specifications. If you don't meet the specifications, you're not a qualified bidder. We can't consider your bid even though you're the lowest price. So you have to meet specifications first, and you have to be lowest bidder. With requests for proposals, it's awarded to the highest scoring proponent. Price is definitely a factor, but not the sole determining factor. Okay, so keep that in mind. And all the rules and of engagement and how to submit your bid and everything else, they're all embedded in our bid documents, okay? So it's real easy to follow. Our approval process, anything up to $500,000 in value, single purchases we're talking about here, can be awarded by the city manager or approved designate. In our case, the city manager has delegated that authority to the division heads or the chief purchasing official, which is my boss. Okay, so over between $500,000 and $20 million, everything needs to be awarded by the bid committee. Okay. Any purchase valued over $20 million needs to be approved by council. Okay, so we do have the standard or very strict approval processes there. Okay, once an award is made, if you're the successful vendor, you'll be awarded a blanket contract or a purchase order. There may be a requirement for an additional formal legal agreement before the award is made. Okay, very important. The second point on that slide there: please do not do any business with the City of Toronto unless you have a purchase order awarded to you, issued to you, or blanket contract or a contract release order from a blanket contract. Okay, at the very least, it'll result in delay of your payment. And I say the very least because it's a nightmare. Maybe shouldn't be saying this, but I'm currently working on something to get the vendor paid. They haven't been paid in over a year and a half because they committed to do work for the city without a purchasing document. Okay, it takes that much paperwork and everything else, as you can well imagine. Okay. This just talks about the financial control. We keep very strict records in our financial information system. Okay, as far as the vendors are concerned, please, on your invoices, we need to have a purchase order number or a blanket contract number or a contract release order number. Okay, and all invoices need to be sent to accounts payable for processing. Not to the person who made the order, not to the buyer whose name is on the purchase order or anything like that. That just delays the process, okay? And all that information, again, is on the purchase order when you are issued a purchase order, for example, or on the, it's actually in our call documents, okay? All right, our online call document system, okay? Accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's in-house. Okay, you can, middle of the night, you can peruse what we have available, our business opportunities, that kind of thing. Okay, all of our call documents, again mentioned with a value of over $50,000, are posted on there. Okay, tender calls with blueprint drawings for construction projects. Okay, there's a posting on there, but you can't download the document, purchase the document, and download it online. Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have that capability yet. You still have to pick those documents up at City Hall, 19th floor, West Tower, okay? Or make arrangements to pick it up through a courier, okay? Some key benefits to our system, and when we did decide to go through to an in-house system about 4 years ago, we researched MERCs, we researched a bunch of different municipalities, government organizations, find out what they use, that kind of stuff, and we decided to go in-house with it, okay? First of all, it's again more user-friendly for the vendor. That was our first objective on this, making it more user-friendly for the vendor community, okay? There wasn't a waste of paper or anything like that. Vendors can look at the complete document. They can purchase only the documents they wish to bid on, so there's not a waste of money there, okay? We're reaching a global market as opposed to in the past where it wasn't so much a global market, okay? So some efficiencies there, reduces printing, mailing costs, makes better use of city resources. There is a vendor registration system that you can still use, okay? So you register for that based on the commodities that you can provide the city, and you'll get automatic notification of if we post a document or when we post a document, okay? If you don't automatically get the document, you still have to go on the website and have a look at it and purchase the document to bid on it, okay? And we've established last year as well a call document purchasers list, and I'll show you that when we go through the actual screenshots of the system, okay? So it's available on our website, toronto.ca. Please bookmark that and everything else. Please remember, it's www.toronto.ca. If you go to toronto.com, you'll find out the great restaurants to eat at and everything else at the city and all the events going on, but you won't find the business opportunities, okay? So CA. So it's easy, 24/7. We accept all major credit cards to purchase the call document, okay? And we charge once and only once for the document. There's a document fee attached to it, okay? Any addenda, additional information, so on and so forth, we don't charge for that, okay? You're paying one time only for the document. All right, so that's our website. There's a little purple section there, doing business with the city. You click on that, and it'll bring you into the doing business site. There's a section there called call documents. You click on that, and it brings you into our online call document system, okay? Very easy to use, user-friendly. There's tons of information on the left-hand side there as far as, hyperlinks to everything, frequently asked questions, anything you want to know. We have a what's new section, so anytime we do something to the system or need to provide information on what's new or what's important, that kind of stuff, we'll post it there. As you can see, this is a little older screenshot from last year, but our vendor registration system that came into effect last year, okay? Again, easy to follow instructions. You can walk through the process. We have the different purchasing units identified there. So if you're in the construction business, obviously you go into construction, goods and services, professional services, so on and so forth, okay? So once you click on that section, it'll bring you to a summary page, okay? You'll see our the information there. I'm not sure if you can read it very well, but basically it's you'll see the call document number and a really quick brief description of what we're looking for. So what I suggest is you go into the site at least once a week, have a quick look in whatever relevant section you need to look at, and it's easy. It takes 2 or 3 minutes just to scroll through the recent postings, see what's there. If you want to see a full description of the document, once you see something that catches your eye, you click on that View Summary button there. Okay. Sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit. You click on the View Summary button, so and you can see a lot more detail there. So you get a more detailed description, any notes, okay? So in this case, there's 3 addenda issued already for this document, and again, the addenda are free. You can download them, okay? You see their pre-bid meeting, any other details like that, okay? If it's a mandatory site meeting, so on and so forth. Most importantly though, you'll see, I couldn't get the whole thing there, but you'll see the complete scope of work or our requirement. Okay, so you can actually view the whole document, the scope of work, exactly what's required now, before you make a decision whether you want to purchase, to bid on the document or not. Okay, so there's all that. Up until this point, it's all free. Okay, when you decide that, yeah, I want to bid on that project or service or good, whatever we're purchasing, and you click on the Purchase Call Document button at the bottom and follow the step-by-step instructions. Very simple, very secure site. Okay, like anything else, we've all purchased things online recently, so there you go. We asked for some information, company name, telephone number, email, so on and so forth. Why we need that is two things. One, we're going to post that information on the or document purchasers list, and also we need that to notify you in case there's any addenda or any changes to the document, so on and so forth. Okay, there's standard terms and conditions that you have to agree to. Once you agree to those things, you enter in your Visa, MasterCard, or Amex number. Okay, you'll get a confirmation page. Okay, so double check your information, ask you to continue. Once the payment goes through, and it's pretty much immediate, you will get this page that'll prompt you, there's your PDF version of the document. It'll prompt you to save the copy to wherever you want to save it, and there you go. Okay. Our pricing structure ranges between $25 and $100, depending on the size of the document, if there's blueprints involved and everything else. Okay, again, that's pretty standard with what you see out in the industry, as far as that's concerned. And okay, so our vendor registration system. If you don't want to go to the website once a week and just have a quick look at what we have, which I recommend anyway, you can register to get automatic notifications of that. And again, no cost for that. You put in your contact name, address, and so on and so forth, and you'll see the little list on the bottom for construction, goods and services, professional services, and there's a list of our commodities. So click on any or all if you wish. Okay, just beware that if you click on all, you'll get, whatever, 20 emails a day. So every time we process we post a call document, you're going to get notified that there's a call document posted. Okay, it's not a foolproof method. You may miss a commodity code or something like that. Don't rely on just the vendor registration system. Please, by all means, do that to get the automatic notifications, but also go in at least once a week and just have a quick look at what we have to offer. Okay. The call document purchasers list, we decided that we were hearing some feedback and everything else for some of the smaller vendors, because a lot of our city projects are higher dollar value. Okay, so some of our smaller vendors always asked us, oh, how do we know who's bidding on what? We want to approach them to be subcontractors, or as Kevin mentioned earlier with the province, to partner up with them, perhaps, and that kind of stuff. So what we do is we have a call document purchasers list. So there's a couple of ways to access it. If you know the call document number, you can go to the respective site there and punch it in. There is a drop down, so you don't have to know the number. You don't have to know the number. You can use the drop down. Okay, and what it'll show you is, or when you're actually looking at the call document, at the bottom of the, if you scroll down at the bottom of the scope of work, you'll see a call document purchasers list. You click on that, it'll show you which bidders or which vendors have purchased the document. Now, in 99.9% of the case, they've purchased the document in order to bid on it. So if you're a smaller vendor, you can contact the respective vendors who've purchased the document, introduce yourself, let them know that you can provide a product or a service or whatever. You want to be a subcontractor. You've seen that they've purchased the document to respond to call document number, blah blah blah, and there you go. So we're making it easier for even the smaller vendors to obtain business. Okay. Contacting us, very simple. We have an email address, citybids@toronto.ca. Okay, and we have a customer service staff at 416-392-7353, is it? I can't read it from here. Again, that'll all be on the website. Okay, so please send us an email or call us between the hours of 8:30 and 4:30 if you have any questions whatsoever regarding the online call document system or how to do business in general with the city. Okay, those numbers, there you go. So it's 392-7353. Email is citybids@toronto.ca, and again, all that information is on our website. Okay. I think I'm pretty good for time. I can take a few questions. Yeah.
Please. There we go.
Can you find out online who won?
Not yet. We have an e-procurement committee, which I sit on as well, and we're looking at always improving and innovating. We're looking at putting that into effect by the end of this year. Actually, that's our goal. So right now, all we have is who won construction projects. By the end of the year, we're hoping to have all our awards listed there. Okay, with the bottom line or with the total overall price. Okay, but in the meantime, you can still find out. Just call us. Okay, call that customer service line. If you don't know who to contact, if you don't know which respective buyer was working on that project, you can call them directly. All our call documents have the buyer name and phone number on there. If you don't know that, you can call us at the customer service line, and we'll find that information for you. If an award has been made, we'll tell you who won and the price. But we're hoping to get that posted by the end of the year.
Other questions for Nick?
Can you be a new vendor for the City of Toronto, or do you have to have already had, 3 bids in, one, before you can start bidding like the federal government?
Hold on one second. I didn't, sorry, I didn't hear all of that. Okay, one more time.
So the federal government has a requirement that you have to have already done 3 projects successfully before you get on their bidding system. Do you have that requirement as well, or can you be a new vendor?
Nope.
Okay.
We have no requirements whatsoever where you have to have done business with us in the past or anything like that. All of our competitive calls are standalone, and the best bidder wins.
Okay, thanks. That's great.
And we can get you on the phone. That's fantastic.
You can get us on the phone. We do answer our phones. And like I said, for this and for doing business with the city and for our online call document system, we actually have dedicated staff and our customer service line for that. Okay?
That's fantastic.
So
thank you.
Please give us a call.
Any other questions for Nicholas? Okay. Thank you,
Oh,
Nicholas.
there's one right there.
There is.
Thank you. Just wondering if you have any special arrangements for technology companies who are trying to offer their new technology services to the city.
Excellent question. Excellent question. I was thinking about that last night. We, for technology companies or any companies in general or that kind of stuff, we have basically the Toronto Office of Partnerships that handle all of our unsolicited proposals or any new and innovative ideas or anything that could save the city money, anything like that. And I don't have the details with me, but again, on our toronto.ca website, under city divisions or division directory, you can do a search saying it's called the Toronto Office of Partnerships. They have a staff of about 10 there, and they handle all those things. So even if you don't see a competitive call for whatever product or service you can provide, and it's something innovative, something new, something that will help out the city, or some product or service that you do want to introduce to the city without waiting for a competitive call, contact our Toronto Office of Partnerships, look on our website for it, and that's where they'll handle that whole process. You might have to register as a lobbyist or whatever. They'll guide you through the process on that. Okay?
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you very much, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day. Oh, thank you. Pleasure, Peter. I'll be around for a bit.
Okay. We'll move on to the federal level of government to speak about their procurement process. We have Manny Aguiropoulos with us, and he is the Chief of SME Stakeholder Engagement for Industry and Government with the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises at Public Works and Government Services Canada. I guess that's all on your business card, Manny? That fits? Great, he's just getting hooked up and we'll be up on stage. And Manny, you've got about half an hour.
Oh, wonderful, thank you. Thanks, Peter. Pleasure. Thank you, folks. And again, my name is Menelaus, Manny Argyropoulos, Manny for short. As Peter had mentioned, I do have 5x7s for you if you need it. But we do have a booth here in booth 404 and 406 that has some very good material for you regarding the information that you're going to be receiving here today. Please come by and pick that up. I also have some colleagues of mine here that are from our procurement group that can field questions in particular that you're looking to get answered. So without further ado, they left Big Brother for last, the process in itself is a little bit similar to how our colleagues do procurement in Ontario and the City of Toronto. It is a process. It's run on rules and regulations that we all need to adhere to. So there's a variety of different ways that the federal government can procure goods and services and construction. And you'll hear me talk a little bit about this today in I'd say 50,000 foot level overview. We do offer seminars more in detail at our offices at Yonge and Sheppard, the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises. You'll hear me talk about that in a few minutes. But the overview for today will talk about the fundamentals of doing business with the Government of Canada. What's important? What are the key steps for suppliers to know? And one of those, or two of those things are who does the buying within the government and why we buy. Okay, so I'll talk briefly about that. And then I'll talk briefly about our office, the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises, and what we do for small businesses in particular. Now, the Government of Canada helps any business that's interested in learning about the process, but we focus in our office with small and medium enterprises. Small, of course, being less than 100 suppliers, and medium being 100 to 499. If you're a service provider, sole proprietor to 49, and then 50 to 499 represents medium. So then we'll talk about the meat of the presentation. It will be on what steps you should take to become a supplier with the Government of Canada. What are the three key things for suppliers to consider? And that is registering as a supplier for consideration for low dollar contract opportunities that aren't posted competitively on MERCs, promoting yourself within those data sets, and marketing to officials in the Government of Canada, and what tools are available for you to do so. And then searching for opportunities, and of course there's only one location to do that, and that's our Government Electronic Tendering Service known as MERCs. And I'll briefly talk about CICP, which is the Canadian Innovation Commercialization Program, but I won't talk too much about it because there's a full seminar this afternoon. My colleague, and our National Director for the program, is here to talk about what's happening with that program, especially now that it's become permanent. So all suppliers need to better understand how the process works in order to get more effectively involved in the process. This schematic kind of gives you an overview of what exactly is procurement and how it's done. You can clearly see here that the federal government is one of the largest buyers in all of Canada, one of two tops. We do roughly about $20 to $25 billion annually. These numbers are a little dated, but it gives you a perspective on the amount of business that we do. Public Works and Government Services Canada, to put it into perspective, is the central purchasing unit or department for the Government of Canada. Public Works being a common service provider to government departments, we provide a variety of different services like translation services, real estate services, and acquisition services to other government departments. So we're the federal procurement arm. Okay, so we manage procurement on behalf of 100 or 120 or so other federal departments and agencies that need to do procurement. It's all based on dollar value amounts and thresholds for purchasing. Okay, here you can clearly see we're in business with roughly about 300,000 suppliers. I'm not sure if you can see that, but you can see that. The top bar just indicates how many suppliers we're in business with. We do a lot of business with a lot of suppliers in Canada. In terms of volume, Public Works only does about 60,000 contracts annually as compared to other government departments which do about 415,000. Now in terms of dollar value, it's totally reversed. Those 60,000 contracts represent 2/3 or more of the actual spend. You can see there 12.4 billion in this schematic as compared to 2.6 billion. Now the other government departments, their niche area is, as I said, the low dollar contract opportunities. Under thresholds for goods, for example, of $25,000, services less than 78,500, and construction and engineering services and the like less than 100,000. The Office of Small and Medium Enterprises that I represent was created in 2005 to help assist small businesses in particular learn about the federal procurement system and how to better navigate it. Our mandate is to inform and assist, as well as to represent their views within the system, okay? Representing your views can be, for example, you may have a barrier or concern with an issue of doing business with the Government of Canada. It's important to let the office know so that we can represent your views, provide that information to our senior people up in Ottawa who effectively work on the policies to make the system more efficient. Because it's not only yourself, it may be somebody in Moncton, New Brunswick, or Nunavut, et cetera, that have similar barriers. Brought together, it can effectively make changes to the system. We offer detailed 7 seminars throughout the year, every Wednesday throughout the month. Okay, so the very first 2 seminars, they're 2 hours each, and they're mandatory to take for suppliers. The first one is this one in detail, talking about marketing and selection and how you should register for as a supplier within the Government of Canada's databases and source lists. The second one is a detailed presentation on bidding on opportunities. Essentially, what's effectively important in preparing your proposal. What's the important sections of a solicitation document and what areas you should focus on preparing your proposal. The rest are specific for certain aspects of procurement. And you're welcome to look on our regional website or our national web portal. If you leave here today, that piece of information at the bottom of this particular page, buyandsell.gc.ca, is the web portal for the Government of Canada's procurement. Please take a look in there. All our reference material is there as well. So what does a supplier need to do to get started, essentially? Well, we recommend a couple of approaches. First and foremost, if you're looking to do business with the federal procurement arm, which is Public Works Government Services Canada, the very first thing you should try to do is to register as a supplier within the Government of Canada's registration database, and that is SRI. SRI is the Supplier Registration Information System. It houses essentially profiles of companies that are capable of providing certain types of services or products that the Government of Canada procures. Okay? In order for you to do so, you really need to be a business established here in Canada with a Canada Revenue Agency number, as well as a business name. So what you effectively will do is you'll use that CRA 9-digit number plus your HST number or PG0 or RT001 or whatever it is. You submit it to this registration database in order to get back a procurement business number. A procurement business number is your business number to do business with Public Works Government Services Canada. In essence, if you don't have that procurement business number and you issue us an invoice, we can't pay you. So it's important to have that procurement business number. And it's also the main database where when you submit your profile with your business number, you'll get back a PBN number and a username and profile which you will then use to update your profile on the commodities that you can provide. Okay? The link here is to the website, and if you have any technical questions, you could always contact the national hotline number, which is 1-800-811-1148. Again, this is the main database that will get you access to other source list databases for application. Some of the other databases for consideration. How many of you are professional service providers? Anyone here? Okay, so professional service providers would need to focus on this particular database. Unfortunately, it's not like SRI. It's not clear-cut. You submit, and within an hour or so or less, you can get a procurement business number back. Here, in actuality, you're creating a corporate profile indicating to the Government of Canada that you have the qualified personnel or your corporation is qualified to provide these professional services when and if the Government of Canada requires them. So again, it's a qualification pool. But the caveat here is for professional services less than $78,500. Now, that's an important number, especially in procurement at all levels, I guess, even the provincial or I guess maybe not the municipality. But for us, it's important because there are trade agreement thresholds that our Government of Canada has trade agreements in play with a lot of other governments across the world. 78.5 is the North American Free Trade Agreement. Anything above that for these types of services would need to then be posted for competition on MERCs by all businesses in those countries. So for this, below 78,500, what you need to do is, if you fall under the categories here, identified here, for information technology, human resource management, project management, and the like, this is the database for consideration. What will happen is you create your profile, you identify your particular resources that you want to submit for qualification. It's kind of putting together a proposal. And in actuality, what you have to do is you're coming into a trading partner agreement with the Crown, with the federal government. You're going to be asked to sign a trading partner agreement so that if you qualify, you will then be one of those suppliers that will be called upon. If called upon, you have to be ready to provide those services to the Government of Canada. Okay? There's an individual that maintains and manages this data set, and that is Sharon Dent. So if you need to talk to her or ask technical questions about qualification or the like, you can contact her through the email provided there. Essentially though, this again does not warrant an awarded contract. This is just a qualification pool for low dollar professional services when they're required by government. And what happens here is you're qualified. If there's a requirement, up to a minimum of 3 suppliers can be asked for quotes. So it's a competitive process as well, but of those qualified already. So it's a shorter list. You're not going against the rest of the world, maybe 4,000 or 5,000 others. If it's location-based, maybe a handful. Okay, so you have better chances of winning a proposal, an award. So if you are in construction, architectural, and engineering services, we have another source list that you can try and qualify for, similar to professional services online. As PS Online, it's a little bit of a process. You need to submit a proposal, pretty much a corporate profile, which could take about 2 to 3 weeks for you to prepare. For PS Online, it's not a win or fail type of scenario. Here you can submit. If you're found that you're missing certain criteria, you'll be asked to provide some additional information. It'll just mean a little bit longer time for you to qualify. For Select, similarly, if you are interested in qualification here, again, you have to create and provide a corporate profile of your company for consideration by the evaluation team, here in this case, Sheila Dana. And what happens is for architectural and engineering services or construction services less than 100,000. Now, for this, you have 2 options. For professional services online, you have to be in business for a minimum of 1 year. Okay, that's the cutoff that the government feels is justifiable enough or long enough in the marketplace for that business to show that they have experience. Here, it's 3 years. 3 years for architectural and engineering or construction trades. And Select is 2-pronged. There's 2 options here. One is for consulting, which is the architectural and engineering. The other one is for construction and trades. So in either case, you need to provide your overview or your corporate profile in each of the trades that you're going to be submitting, or for each of the consulting services that you want to register your staff for. Here you have to provide as well a minimum of 3 referenceable projects, recent projects, that the evaluators will use to assess, to ascertain whether or not they truly are qualified to do the type of work that you're looking for. Again, here, in this instance, this is maintained by a database or a computer. What happens here is a project manager has a project somewhere within Canada, and they're going to look for a qualified supplier within Select. So they ask a procurement individual to go in and pull out a minimum of 3 suppliers based on location within a 25-kilometer radius of where the project is actually being done, perhaps, to identify these potential qualified suppliers. From there, the project manager can go and negotiate with any one of those 3, 4, 5, 6, however are selected, depending on the complexity of the procurement, to negotiate a contract for award. So if they come to this individual and they're equally qualified, they'll ask them if you can do the work by the end of May. You may turn around and say, sorry, I can't do it by the end of May. They'll go and negotiate with another one on the list until they get somebody that's qualified enough. Okay, so the computer also understands who's been awarded previous contracts. So if you've been awarded a previous contract, you may not necessarily be selected again for procurement that comes up in that area at that time. So another consideration. So the this is the opportunities for low dollar contracting opportunities that are not openly competed for by posting a tender on Mercs. If you want to compete for these types of contracts, you really need to be registered in the supplier databases in order for our buying community to have your profile and potentially select you for either a request for quotation or a proposal, okay? So if you're not in these systems, you're missing out, is what I'm trying to say. So get involved by getting registered if you're interested. The other way of doing business with the Government of Canada is the open tender system, and that is through Mercs, okay? But before we get there, one of the more important aspects of being on these registration supplier databases, it's one thing to be on them, and potentially you can be selected, obviously. It's better than being outside the list, because there you'd be floating in space, so to speak, with the rest of the world. But it's another thing to proactively market yourself to the right officials so that perhaps you could be on the forefront of their minds when they're sourcing out these suppliers. It's thinking, you've come to me, I think 6 months ago or 3 months ago, I remember your company. I may use you, if you're an SRI, to provide me a quotation. Now, I'm not going to go directly to you to do work, but you're in a short list of 3 as opposed to 5,000, 10,000, etc. Okay, so marketing is important to get involved in, and we're encouraging people to be proactive in that. And there's a variety of different tools that the Government of Canada provides through our buy and sell web portal. Okay, so a few things before you go into marketing as well. You really should have a proper strategy in play before you go into talking to people, because aside from the fact these are busy people and you likely will take a little bit of time to get a hold of these individuals, you should have a proper marketing strategy, know a little bit about how the government functions and their operations and that, to ask the appropriate questions. So for example, first and foremost, some information that I'm providing for you here today is that public works officials are important people to get access to, because they are the procurement people in most instances. They're the procurement arm of the federal government. So there's tools available to gain access to these individuals. Furthermore, there are other departments that do purchasing on their own, up to $25,000. In the short little while, you'll find that all other government departments will be purchasing up to $25,000, but for the time being, the majority of them can only purchase up to $5,000. After that, they come to Public Works to get their procurement done. So there is another list maintained through Buy and Sell that gives you access to the departmental material managers that handle the procurement for each of the departments. These people are also good people to get access to help you identify who within their departments are the people to talk to. Okay? And then obviously there's some other things in our Buy and Sell website. Now, I don't have any access here, but if you go to Buy and Sell, it's a fairly user-friendly environment. It's similar to the other websites that you saw previously. It's set up for a web portal, not only for suppliers, but as well as for businesses and government officials. So if you go into Buy and Sell, on the left side, you have a link available for businesses. If you go under businesses and you hit on contacts, you'll be able to access the tools. The very first tool that you have access to is the Procurement Allocation Directory, better known as PAD for short. PAD is the Government of Canada's list of the commodity experts that manage, the public works officials, that manage the commodities that we purchase. And the Government of Canada purchases quite a lot of goods, services, and construction. Roughly about 15,000 different types of products and services. So each one of those commodities has a specific unique code identified to it. How many of you know about NAICS codes, N-A-C-I-S? I know the fellow from the US will understand that one. But the Government of Canada solely uses government, what we call as GSIN codes, Goods and Services Identification Numbers. And for each identification number, GSIN code, we categorize that as a commodity. So likely someone within Public Works will have some knowledge or maintain that commodity. So these are the upper echelon officials that can tell you things such as purchasing cycles, for example, within the Government of Canada, standing offers that may be in play that you would need to qualify for, what departments have spending money in their budget for this type of commodity, et cetera, et cetera. So they're good people to gain access about information. How many of you know when the fiscal year starts for the Government of Canada? April 1st, right? March 31st is a year end. So technically speaking, marketing is a good is good to do anytime. You can find someone to market to, but strategically speaking, when is it a good time to go market to Government of Canada officials? Likely not the end of the fiscal year, because they're pulling their hair out trying to fill out all these requirements that have been put into play. Budgets are not allotted really till likely the end of May, early June. So, people aren't even aware of what they can or can't spend. So if you get your strategy in play to talk to people or connect with people, usually tail end of summer after summer season's over, vacation season, September, October, November, and December is an ideal time to talk to government officials, because that's when a lot of the procurement, especially low dollar procurement, is happening. Because the government, of course, as you all understand, they have certain budgets allotted to them, and if they can't spend those budgets have to be sent back. And usually that's identified by the beginning of December. Okay? So technically speaking, know when to contact who. So the PAD people are the upper echelon. The middle people for each department are the departmental material managers. And these people are known as DMMs for short. And you can gain access to these people through buy and sell as well. But your best bet to really instill what you're capable of and what you can provide is the end user community. The people at the front lines that are actually requesting the procurement. So people in authority, actually, people that have the ability to purchase, regional managers, directors. So if you're in architectural and engineering services, you're not going to go talk to somebody in communications. You're going to source somebody out in the professional technical services division of Public Works that maintains architectural and engineering services. And you can use the Government of Canada's white pages, better known as GEDS for short, which is known as the Government Electronic Directory Service. And if you use that, you can clearly find anybody that's in the buying, okay, at the front lines. You can source me out, for example, if you know my name, but you could also do it by department or office and work backwards. So if you know somebody in the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises, or you want to market to somebody in my office, you can source that out through GEDS, find out who I am, who my director is, and ultimately engage us. Okay? Likewise, the engineering manager or the director in that department. So those are the various tools available to you. We strongly suggest going on to buy and sell under contacts to source out some additional tools. So that's the low dollar side of things, and the importance of being proactive in marketing to the right officials and gaining access to some of those contract opportunities that are not necessarily competed for on MERCs. How many of you have MERCs accounts? Anyone? Okay, this is where the Government of Canada solely posts their tenders on. Okay, MERCs is a third-party supplier who was awarded the contract for hosting our tenders. They're known as MediaGriff. The Government of Canada, the provincial government, the federal government of the United States, construction companies, some private industries all post on MERCs. So if you are interested in MERCs, they do have online webinars that they can talk to you about how to set up your accounts, etc., etc. But ideally, when you're in MERCs and you need to identify a Government of Canada tender, it's identifiable by the Canadian flag icon. And these tend to be for procurements usually above $25,000 that we need to compete for. Okay? So if you are registered as a supplier in the SRI, the Supplier Registration Database that I mentioned to you earlier, which is a free service and it's easy to do, you get your procurement business number and you can gain access to a free MERCs account. One of the things that the Office of Small and Medium Enterprises did when it was introduced in 2005 to make the system more open, fair, and transparent was to subsidize fees for suppliers, especially small businesses, so they can have less cost to doing business with the Government of Canada. So now if you get your PBN, you can go to MERCs and get a free MERCs account to gain access and download all the Government of Canada tenders. Okay? So that's an opportunity for you as well. The thing with the MERCs is that it's a search engine, okay? Essentially, you can go to the main website, go into the search engine section, and type in your particular procurement or commodity you're looking for. Anything that matches that procurement will be provided to you in a list that's currently active, okay? So if you type in furniture, for example, it'll list you all the furniture contracts or tenders that are posted on MERCs. You go through them, you identify through the abstract section what is going to be required. Okay? You assess whether or not this is something that you want to submit an application or proposal for. If so, you then need to be logged in through your free account or your paid account to gain access to that document. Okay? Once you have the solicitation document, everything you need to know about that procurement is available to you there. If you have a technical question, however, there's only one individual that you can ask questions to about that tender. And that person is the contracting authority on that document. You can't come talk to me if I give you information or put you down a different road. I can get in trouble and you can submit a proposal that's going to be found non-compliant. So be certain of what the rules and regulations are for that. Another good thing about MERX that there's a tool available to you that was recently introduced, and that's called Document Review List. And how many of you in MERX have used Document Review Lists? Anyone? Does anyone know what Document Review List is? Once you log in, you have the option to order, preview, order, and then the Document Review List. The Document Review List is a good tool for especially small businesses to use to source out potential partners. The Document Review List is a list of all the suppliers that have downloaded that tender, not necessarily meaning they're going to be submitting a proposal, but it'll tell you others in your area that are interested in submitting. So technically speaking, if you're looking at that proposal and you're saying, hey, you know what, I can only do about 60%, maybe there's somebody on that list that can provide the other 40, and you can joint venture and submit a proposal to gain access to that contract. Those are the considerations. Similarly, MERX has a contract history search, as well as buy and sell through Contracts Canada. I encourage you to use those to find out who's been successful as well. Maybe contact them, market to them for potential other contracts that they may use you as a subcontractor for. Okay? So there's tools available to you that we encourage people to get involved with and to source out even through MERX. Okay? So those are the key steps for businesses to really take a look at if they're trying to get involved with the Government of Canada. If you're looking to do business on the one road, which is the low dollar side of things, you really need to be registered in the appropriate supplier databases for consideration by our buying community. For competitive tenders, it's you against the rest of the world. It's how good is your proposal going to relatively be against somebody else, ultimately being evaluated and scored on the same level as other proposals. That's how the Government of Canada usually awards contracts, through competitive means. So again, there's not a lot of marketing to do. There you just get involved and do your proposal. In a nutshell, that's how you do business with the Government of Canada. It is a little bit of a daunting exercise. However, we're here to demystify the process. The more you're aware of the process, the more intel you have about it, the simpler it gets. Again, it doesn't hurt to try it out. Trial and error is always an important thing, because within the federal procurement system, one of the good things is if you submit a proposal and you truly know that you're not going to be qualified, you can find out exactly where you've gone wrong, so you can improve down the road in your next proposal through what is known as a post-award debrief. And we encourage you to take that up for any proposal that you submit for. This will give you an evaluation or a letter back indicating where you've fallen short so that you can improve for the next time around. So one of the last things I'm going to talk about is briefly, for those of you that are innovators or Canadian companies with innovation, is the Canadian Innovation Commercialization Program. I'll just briefly mention it. There is a seminar here this afternoon that I hope that you all will attend that will give you insight about what the program is all about and what direction it's heading in, because currently there is only a pilot program for this particular innovation program that ends at the end of 12/13. The last call for proposal was launched and closed on April the 11th. What it is the Government of Canada is looking to bolster innovation in Canada by establishing this program to have companies qualify under 4 broad categories: environment, safety and security, health, and enabling technologies. If you are a company in Canada that wishes to qualify for this program, take a look and see how you can qualify. Essentially, it's to help assist companies bridge the gap to commercialization. In actuality, it is a program that will allow the Government of Canada to become your first purchasers and testers of your innovation and provide you a real-world evaluation so that you can use that and leverage it to sell your product to the real world. Because ultimately, as innovators, when you go knocking on doors to try to make your first sale, one of the hardest things is to prove to people that you have a valued product. By having your review and endorsement by the Government of Canada, we're hoping that that will help assist you in getting that done. So without further ado, in conclusion, there are a lot of opportunities with the federal government. It's how you apply yourself and how you get involved. You need to register your company in the appropriate databases to create a profile so that we're aware of you. You only need to search on Mercs for competitive contracts, for opportunities there. And research your markets, get your intel, and establish your proper strategy for connecting with officials in the Government of Canada. We have a regional office here in Ontario that helps assist all small businesses. Any business that wants to learn about the process, please join us. Come out at 4900 Yonge Street to get in contact with us for our seminars. We also have a national hotline, and if you're from other regions, we do have regional offices all across Canada. Our booth is 404 and 406. My colleagues from our Procurement Director departments are here today to talk to you about any questions you may have about selling to the Government of Canada. Thank you very much, and I'll entertain any questions. Woo! That's good on the diaphragm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. That was really useful. I only found out about you. This is my second startup in the second company. So the OSME office is great. So
wonderful. Thank you.
I recommend it to people. The one clarification I'd make is for PS Online,
Yep.
you do have to have 3 completed successful
Projects?
small projects with the government. So we did try and register on it, but we were told we have to wait till our projects are finished.
Oh, okay.
So if you don't have already an established services, the one recommendation that was made to us was to go through another services company or something like that.
Okay, to partner with someone to get access to those that experience.
So that's one way to do it, but it's not really the best.
Yeah.
And then the other question for you was on the SRI. So SRI doesn't have such a requirement. You just go and register.
It's open. You just submit, you create your profile, check your commodities that you can qualify for, so we know. If you feel strongly about the PS Online, again, send us an email and we'll push it up to the group to see how that can be looked at potentially. But as a government department, as the Government of Canada, there's certain requirements that we need to give us that comfort in knowing that you have the qualifications and confidence for us to call you when we need you.
And then last point was we are a CICP participant.
Wonderful.
We went on in the first round.
First round?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And we're in the process of completing our project. It's gone very well. So I think that's a great program for all this crew.
I'm encouraged to hear that, and I'm glad to hear that there are businesses that are taking advantage of the program. Thank you.
Just another question about this 3 proposals requirement. Does subcontracting count as one of your 3?
The best thing is to ask the technical authority, but I believe they do. In the actual website, it'll tell you if you're using subcontractors, you can show how that applies to your examples.
As long as his name shows up.
Yeah.
So if, let's say he's a subcontractor but called Company B,
yeah.
but Company A has the contract.
That's right.
So as long as Company B is identified as a subcontractor at some level, he gets the visibility.
As long as your name is on that,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else? That's great.
Any other questions for Manny?
We're here all day, folks, and thank you for coming out. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Right, yes, so we are going to move on to lunch in just a few minutes, but I'd like to thank our presenters. David Ogilvie from the Ministry of Economic Development and Innovation, Nick Falcone from the City of Toronto, Kevin Fox from the Ministry of Government Services, and of course Manny from the federal government. Just saying thank you. I'd also like to thank OMERS, who is the sponsor of the Procurement Marketplace in this theater. Thank you to OMERS very much. And remind you to please come back in the afternoon. We will be having more procurement presentations. Manny was just speaking to the CICP program, or Canadian Innovation Commercialization Program. The director, Helen Brader, is here, and she'll be speaking to it. There will also be a presentation, again, a federal level presentation on promoting R&D investment in Canada through procurement. So thank you all for being here and attending. And lunch will be in Hall F. If you were here yesterday, it's the big room right by registration. Okay, and that's at 11:45. So thanks again.